Hi guys, this is JSM.com and I'm here with a review of the Motorola Moto G82 5G. We're dealing with a mid-range phone which has as a selling point a 50 megapixel main camera with optical image stabilization, but wait, there's more. There are stereo speakers on board the device, a clean Android 12 in a stock version, well, except for a few customization. And believe it or not, in this slim and light chassis, there's a big battery, 5000 mAh. All of those are sold to you for about $400, and I think it's time for a review. Now, the phone here comes in black or gray, and if you look closely below this plastic panel, there is a dotted pattern right behind it. It's a bit glossy, but I would rather call it frosty, and we have the familiar oval camera design. It's still a pretty fresh design from Motorola, and what amazes me the most is how compact this is, 8mm in thickness and a mere 173 grams, which is pretty light for a 6.6-inch screen device. It's also quite comfy to handle on account of the flat frame, and one-hand usage posed zero problems to me in the day-to-day use. Bonus, we have a water-repellent coating. Now, the screen which you are seeing here is an AMOLED, and as you know, Motorola is banking a lot on AMOLEDs, putting them on basically all of their Moto Gs. 6.6-inch AMOLED Full HD Plus, 120Hz for the gamers, and also with bezels which are pretty symmetrical and not very thick in my opinion. Now, when it comes to the actual viewing experience, we have a clip here, and it's ready to show the prowess of the screen. Okay, so full screen right now. I'm not bothered at all by the punch hole for the selfie camera. Satisfying colors. One of the purest whites I've seen on a mid-range phone, also deep blacks. Quite generous viewing angles, wide viewing angles, that is. And it handles the sunlight greatly with a superb contrast. We have a pixel arrangement of the pentile matrix variety, and next up, as usual, I'm going to tell you more about the brightness, having measured it with a lux meter. This is how we achieved 652 lux units, which is an excellent result. It's superior to phones like the, for example, Realme 9 Pro Plus, and Honor Magic 4 Lite, and the Samsung Galaxy A53. It's inferior to the Motorola Edge 30, and by the way, it's also inferior to the Xiaomi Mi 11 Lite 4G and 5G. Now, the settings are pretty typical for what you're seeing on an Android phone these days, and I'm talking about screen settings. And you go here, you got your brightness options, you got your dark theme, but the most important one is the colors, which can be natural or saturated. And we also have a temperature color slider. Now, on the CPU front, I'm going to show you this app, which in turn shows you what CPU we have here. It's a Qualcomm Snapdragon. Well, actually, it's not a 480. Let's try the other app. As you know, sometimes they may get improperly identified, so this one doesn't also identify it. I'm going to tell you it's a Qualcomm Snapdragon, it's the Qualcomm Snapdragon 695 5G, a 6nm octa-core chip, which I have seen before, I'll confess it. I've seen it on the Oppo Reno 7 Lite, and the Poco X4 5G, and the Realme 9 Pro. It's not alone, we have quite a solid setup here. Okay, so we also have 6 gigs of RAM, and at the same time we have 128 gigabytes of storage. The good news is that we also get microSD card slot and zero lag no matter what games you're playing, even including Diablo Immortal, which as you can see I have installed here. Now, the benchmarks, let's see what story they tell. So I'm going to go here, Moto G82, and check it out on 228. This is where we're just above the Galaxy A52 5G and above the Huawei Nova 5T. More importantly, we surpassed the OnePlus Nord CE2 Lite, but we stayed below the Vivo V21 and below the Oppo Reno 6 5G. When it comes to Geekbench 5 in the multi-core subtest, we're just above the Xiaomi Mi 10 Lite 5G and the Galaxy A52 again. That's basically the benchmark of how we're going to handle these results. And we also surpassed the Honor Magic 4 Lite. We're below the Redmi Note 11 Pro 5G. Now, as far as 3D Mark is concerned, let's pick maybe Slingshot Extreme. As you can see, we're above the Honor Magic 4 Lite again, above the Moto G60, and above a few other phones like the Galaxy A52 again. However, this time we're below the Redmi Note 11 Pro and below the Xiaomi Mi 10 Lite 5G. I would say it handles the peers okay, and when I say peers, I mean phones with a similar processor on board. An even better piece of news is that we had zero problems with the temperature, in benchmarks a mere 32.4 degrees Celsius, and in games 35.9 degrees Celsius, which is by no means overheating. Now on the battery front, you can see it clearly here, 5000 mAh lithium polymer, and we have a charge of 30 watts here and a bundled 33 watt charger. Now the results are pretty spectacular here, well, especially the continuous usage. The video playback is just okay, 15 hours and 52 minutes. On its own, it would be a good result. However, I happen to know many phones which go past 16, 18 hours nowadays, so there's that. With this value, 15 and 52, it surpasses Honor Magic 4 Lite and the ZTE Axon 20, but it stays below the Samsung Galaxy A53 and the Realme 9 Pro Plus. Things are better in the continuous usage. As you see, we almost cracked top 60 with 14 hours and 20 minutes, which means this is actually better than the Xiaomi Mi 11 Lite 5G, OnePlus Nord 2T and Realme 9 Pro Plus. It's no match for the Motorola Edge 20 Lite and the Xiaomi 11 Lite 5G new edition. The charging is, I would say, decent. 1 hour and 40 minutes. I've seen better, I've seen worse. After 30 minutes, we are at the 54% mark, which is actually not bad. And I think we're done with the battery, which is quite okay. And I think it's time to talk about the acoustics. I was puzzled at first. I wonder if this is actually the speaker. No, it's the earpiece here, combined with the speaker at the bottom. And we also have an audio jack and also some Dolby tuning, which can happen from here in the dedicated section, Dolby Atmos and a bunch of presets. Now, let's listen to songs. Okay, so a bunch of ideas. Finally, an earpiece that is almost able to keep up with the bottom speaker. That's nice. Not much bass, sufficient loudness for me, I would say. Good high notes, decent voices, but no fullness. The sound lacks fullness and bass. Overall, it's expected for a mid-range phone. The biggest performance here is the fact that it's able to keep up the top speaker with the bottom speaker. Now the volume power, we have 77.6 decibels with the acoustic sample test at the top and 79.7 decibels at the bottom. Not impressive. We usually expect something like 84, 85 decibels. Expected more. We did surpass the iPhone 13 Pro and Galaxy A52s 5G, not bad, but we're still below hundreds of other phones, 400 other phones, including Motorola Edge 20 and the Realme 9 Pro Plus. In games, we're dealing a bit better. 99.8 decibels, which is fine, superior to the Redmi Note 11 Pro, but inferior to the Huawei Nova 9 SE. Now, camera-wise, what we have here is a selfie shooter of 16 megapixels, which takes a default 4 megapixel capture, which is actually not that bad. At the backside, there's a triple camera. The main shooter is a 50 megapixel one with optical image stabilization, followed up with an 8 megapixel ultra-wide camera and a 2 megapixel macro camera. There's an LED flash here and we're stuck with Full HD capture, video of course, with 30 or 60 frames per second. Now let's check out the photo section because we have quite a few of them, and let's see what we have here. So let me get started with the selfies first. There are two batches of selfies here. There's the underwhelming one. Avoid the beautification options. These are totally baby-faced option. This doesn't look like a real human being at all. I didn't enjoy them and actually went ahead and remade them on a separate day with a separate t-shirt, and I'm actually very happy with the results. This time I can actually almost see the pores and the facial expression and the scars and all the imperfections. It's actually a pretty solid selfie camera if you keep the beauty mode deactivated. A lot of details, pretty nice texture here and a good separation in the bokeh. I think we're done with the selfies. Let's go back to the main camera. The main camera is pretty realistic in colors, if not a bit cold color-wise. The ultra-wide camera is a bit of a letdown. It gets a bit darker and murkier with the details. This is a photo where you can actually tell that the hue is slightly blue and the colors are a bit cold. Now, if you're one of those persons who hates the overblown popping up colors, this may be the camera for you. It's a bit more pragmatical. The colors are a bit more muted and, as I like to say, well behaved. We have several shots here and all the colors are pretty well kept in check. They're not exaggerated or overblown, even though every once in a while you would like to see more life being apparent in those shots. Okay, and this is the series of attempts at taking a proper macro, and once again the close-ups are actually better than the 2 megapixel macros, which are lacking in detail quite a bit. So regular shot, and this should be the ultra wide shot. Of course, the red of the roses is a bit overblown, but not by a huge proportion. An attempt at properly focusing here, which is actually not bad for this macro shot, and again for this one, excellent texture of the metal and its wear during the time. All in all, not a bad camera, but the main camera takes the cake. The ultra wide and the macro one are nothing to write home about. They're nothing special, and beware of the a bit colder colors than the usual warm colors you get to see. This is a perfect example of the usage of an ultra wide camera. Not enough of this building is captured, so we resort to this one, and even this one doesn't capture the whole thing. Okay, some extra urban shots and urban art installations we have here. Pretty well rendered. The sky may appear nice here, but if you look at it on a large screen, you won't be that happy. And a few more flowers. It was sunset, so the reds are getting a bit more tame here, and this focus was actually pretty solid. And one thing I will remember from this camera is that the texture of the buildings is captured in a pretty nice fashion. So all in all, I would say it can compete with the main camera, the Galaxy A52s or Galaxy A53, but the ultra-wide and macro cameras are a bit lacking. That's daytime. Let's go to the nighttime. Well, I'm actually a bit disappointed. I mean, Motorola didn't exactly have huge performances here, except for the Motorola One devices back in the day. The shots are a bit washed out for my taste. The yellow is a bit diluted, and there are too many reflections for its own good. Doesn't create memorable shots. Of course, the ultra wide one is a mess. It's totally dark and a bit distorted. The lights are a bit deformed. This is actually one of the better ones. It's a bit warmer in colors, pretty clear and detailed, but in general, things felt a bit washed out and lifeless, so there's that. I mean, you do get nice architectural details, don't get me wrong, but it's nothing special here or memorable compared to what sometimes Motorola used to offer. Okay, so we are about done with the camera. Let's talk about the video now. Of course, we're about done with the photos, so there's still videos to cover. We have 14 videos, and since it's an optical image stabilization device, one of the most important ones remains this one. Throughout my filming, the ambience capture of the microphones was a pretty solid point. This is the stabilization. I'm not overly impressed by it, but keep in mind, the image doesn't vibrate. That's one of the best things. So there is no vibration or trepidation. You do feel that you're taking a left, right step. This is with the stabilization on. If you deactivate it, things will get much worse. And we have the proof here. This is what happens when you deactivate stabilization. The image vibrates, shakes, trepidates. So keep stabilization on when filming and walking. Excellent focus between subjects, close-up, and background. And keep in mind it's moving cars, so it's a pretty tough scenario for a mid-range phone. If you want to see the, well, let's go back here a bit. This is the selfie video. Not exactly impressed, but also not underwhelmed. I like the texture. Once again, the microphone is pretty mind-blowing, but the stabilization can't keep up. Colors also not bad. This is a panning. Keep in mind, when panning in 60 frames per second, you will definitely see a lack of stabilization. And once again, the image is bluish and I would say rather cold. The colors are cold, they're not warm, like I said in the photo department. Beware of the areas which are lit from the background, like here where we have the sun, everything is drowned in a white layer. But there's also a nice hue of yellow injected into the shot, making things a bit warmer and nicer. For Full HD capture, these are actually not bad details. That's the main thing to remember here. This is daytime, and we also have nighttime. We actually have two of them. The first one is pretty bad, to be honest. I think we're going to focus on the second one. It feels ultra wide. There's no explanation for this huge amount of grain and noise, so this is the one to remember. The colors are actually quite okay if you're going for the typical yellow. I see some banding here. I see some of those flickering lights. Stabilization is a bit underwhelming. Nothing truly special. I also see some grain and some reflection. So not much to remember here. I would say it's rather typical for a mid-range phone below $500. Okay, so the main camera is the only one that matters here, and when it comes to connectivity, let's see what we got. So the phone offers the pretty typical package. It provides you with 5G, Wi-Fi dual band, Bluetooth 5.1, GPS, GLONASS, Galileo, and let's see if you also get NFC or not. So we go here, and we should see NFC for your payment needs. At the bottom we have an USB-C 2.0 port, and once again we have an audio jack at hand and some pretty solid microphones. Speaking of which, the calls were pretty loud and clear, and when it comes to the speed test, let's see how we did. When it came to the 5G, we got up to 278 megapixel in download and 30.5 megapixel in upload. When it comes to Wi-Fi, we were able to achieve 298 megapixel in download and 328 megapixel in upload. I would say it's fine, but I've seen better on some other mid-range phones. And now we proceed to the software. Okay, so as far as software is concerned, this is obviously Android 12 with the Motorola user interface on top. It's a stock experience except for this area. You probably know it from a few other Motorola phones, and you're going to use it for some customization. So if you go here, you can customize quite a bit. You got your layout, fonts, colors, icon shapes, sounds, display size, font size, and system theme. A lot to make your own custom experience. There are the gestures, which are not few, and we actually use some of them to navigate. We have your tips, we have the display, pick display, and attentive display, and the play area, which includes games, media controls, and Dolby Atmos. Gamers will be rewarded with special options here, including a sidebar access and the ability to record the screen if they want to become streamers, block notifications, and block certain gestures. Okay, other than that, we have the news feed to the leftmost home screen. We got the recents area like this. That's the multitasking happening here. We got split screen available, of course. This is one of the most beautiful quick settings area I've seen. I've only seen it on Pixel phones and this Motorola series of devices. We have the notifications here. It's a pretty clean experience. What's not to love about Android 12 basically. And if you want some widgets, we have them here, and they're as beautiful as ever. Android 12 also means privacy dashboard and a focus on privacy, playing nice with smart speakers around the house, recommendations here, connectivity options, notifications, storage, security. By the way, we're using the fingerprint scanner here in the power button. I just unlocked the device. There was a slight delay there, but the precision is available. This is the privacy department with a privacy dashboard, as I mentioned before. You're going to see which resources have been used by which apps. There's digital well-being and parental control. And we don't have bloatware, that's the good news. Everything I have here extra easy installed by me. Motorola only contributes with its Moto app and its interactive wallpapers, which are actually not bad. So that's the core of the experience software-wise. I think it's time to address the verdict. Now, the core of the phone is, you may expect it to be the camera, but you'll see that it may not just be the camera. So the pros and cons. On the pro side, we have a compact, light, and reasonably slim phone, which is quite comfy to use on account of the flat frame. The screen is surprisingly bright. I actually didn't expect this. The performance is quite high. I'm talking about the Snapdragon processor inside. We have a rather good battery life here, especially for the continuous usage. Nice stereo speakers. We have microSD and audio jack on board. A series of great selfies. If I didn't retake that gallery, I would have told you that they're actually poor, where they're actually not poor. Solid main camera, surprisingly good microphones, okay details for Full HD capture, and a stock user interface is always welcome in Android 12. Of course, customizable. On the cons, the charging should have been faster, the video playback battery life, I expected slightly better from it, and the speakers lack bass. There's no fullness for the speakers. The beauty mode spoils the selfies for sure. The ultra-wide and macro cameras are a bit of a bummer. The nighttime photos, somehow I expected better from them. And finally, the stabilization is there, but it's not exactly what I expected. I wanted just a bit better from it. In the end, the core points of the phone are the screen, CPU, and battery. Then we add the selfie, and only then the main camera. It doesn't want to be a camera phone, it wants to be a solid mid-range phone with a few updates and I would say a well-rounded experience if you're looking for simplicity. That's the core here. It's pure, stock, simple Android, and the main camera is solid. That's the message Motorola should send you. great main camera, superb screen on account of the very high brightness, and a clean stock Android 12 experience. If it's worth $400 or not, well, you're going to learn that by comparing it with the other models on the market and see how bright their screens are, how compact they are, and if, well, probably not, they deliver clean Android 12 or not. Well, as I said before, probably not. That's about it. This has been the review of the Motorola Moto G82 5G. Goodbye.